Hey everybody, welcome to another video. Almost forgot to record this one. It is Wednesday, so it is comic book day. And it's technically, I dropped the video for the Marvel Week 10 this morning on my YouTube channel. It is Week 10, so I'm technically recording this for Week 11, which I'm going to drop next week on Week 11. So it's confusing. I just wanted to be ahead a week just in case, so bear with me on that if I screw that up, or if I talk about the wrong week. But I am going to talk about Week 11 of 1985 now, so that should air after the one that I posted before. One I posted before. Anyways, sorry, I was practicing the guitars and I got a little too rocky and I was rocking out here in the bedroom, so I kind of lost track of time. I went, well, was I supposed to do something today? Oh yeah, I was supposed to record that video. Don't worry, I've prepared for it. And I prepared for it differently as opposed to like last week's video. I talked about them and gave you my firsthand, experience with these right off the bookshelf. This one I did a little extra because I just figured it makes sense. I went back and not only did I read the comics that I did buy that week in 1985, also read some of the ones that I didn't buy. So at least I've got something a little bit to say on it. Now I'm not going to go through each one of them panel for panel. I might gloss a couple of them, like my favorites, but I'll at least make mention of it now that the stories are pretty fresh in my mind. So I'm going to try to do that. So the week of the next week, I'm going to try to read up week 12, and get that ready for next week. So like I said, just so I'm ahead of myself on this. So let's just jump into it. Let me jump over to the other screen. So we're back on this this MarvelFandom.com wiki, which if you just put in, you can copy the address I've got right up there because it is a little hard to find on their site. So if you just put in the MarvelFandom.com/wiki/category:week, I believe it's capital week _11, you should be able to see it maybe up there on my screen if you zoom in or look at it closely. Or just look up Week 11, 1985 March Marvel Comics and then put in fandom.com and it should go to this page. Like I said, these pages are a little hard to find straight from them. I don't like that about this site. Because you gotta have to scroll through some categories and you have to get to it kind of like in a weird kind of way. You have to click on like a year and then it'll give you the options. It's a little complicated. Maybe on that or I'm just doing it wrong. But anyways, let's go into this. So this is week 11. So it was March 13th back in the day. What's today? Well, today's technically March 5th, but next Wednesday, which is the week that it's supposed to be on, which is when this is airing, it's the 12th. Okay, so it's a day off. It's not too far off. It's funny. I don't know if I mentioned it before talking about the Epic comics. I've read every single comic here just recently, with the exception of the Marvel Tales. Is kind of there's no point. It's just classic, Amazing Spider-Man. I didn't read the Moon Knight issue. It's the only one I didn't read. And then the Marvel Age, I read most of it, but a lot of it's just like telling you what's coming up the next month, or what's coming out this month, as in these comics, and then what to look forward to. And it does a couple of, little editorials on certain things. But now here's one thing. I don't know if I went over this before in the last issue. I'm going to go over this again because I did notice this. So let's click over to that Marvel Age right here. I've got it up here. Okay. Cool cover. I think it's what's his face did the cover? Al Milgrom, I think. But anyways, so if you right in the credit page, if you go to their editorial, right under their editorial, it has this Marvel Top 10. Now this is by Marvel, and this is in real time. So this is 1985. And the thing that's funny about this is I kept saying when the MCU, after the Sony put out the Spider-Man movies and the X-Men movies, I said, and then they did the Iron Man movie, which we didn't know was going to turn to this MCU. But when they announced they're going to do this Avengers thing, I thought to myself, See, I didn't know that they didn't have the rights to X-Men at the time. I just didn't pay attention to that stuff. Because like I said, I don't really care about the movies. But, I mean, I saw them, but I was like, why are they spending so much time on the Avengers? I mean, really? It's like, why can't they... It's like, all through the 80s, like the heyday of comics. You know, some people say it's the 70s, whatever. Some people say it's the 60s. But for me, the heyday for me was the 80s, and most Gen Xers who started collecting comics in the 80s, I would say, as well. And that also goes into the 90s, because the 90s was pretty much just a carbon copy of what was going on in the 80s, with the exception of other things. But anyway, as far as who was popular. And so, like I said, Spider-Man, the X-Men and Spider-Man ruled the roost throughout the 80s and pretty much throughout the 90s too. And I would say probably until like the Ultimates came out, that got popular. But like I said, I think comics were dead by 2000. Or by 2000, by 2000. So, you know, but I said, why are they doing this? And somebody said, oh, because they don't have the rights. And I go, why don't they? Oh, they sold the rights, the movie rights off when they went bankrupt in the 90s because of the big speculator burst. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Sorry, I gotta. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Got one of my hard drives, external hard drives, is working a little overtime. I want to give it a rest. Turn my lamp off. But anyways, so where was I? So yeah, the X-Men, you know, they were, like I said, that was the most popular. And, you know, little did I know that when they sold it off, of course they couldn't do Marvel Studios couldn't do the X-Men movies at the time, and they couldn't do Spider-Man. Like, well, man, they shot themselves in the foot. So I guess, like, well, I guess that's all they got left is the Avengers. So, I mean, and Fantastic Four, but they also were being done by Sony. I was like, okay, they got nothing but the Avengers, so they might as well run with it. And they did. And, of course, it was popular, very successful. But, like I said, I always said that. And, you know, I've talked to friends and stuff, and they're like, are you sure? Weren't the Avengers popular in the 80s? No, they were not popular in the 80s. I liked them because, like I said, She-Hulk was in the group, and I kind of liked the Avengers. And, like I said, John Buscema was on the art. So I liked it, but it was not popular. And this is proof right here. And this isn't definitive proof. This is pretty much smoking gun. Marvel Top 10. By Marvel. Not by fans. By Marvel. The best, like I said, it's based right here. This month we'll look at direct sales rankings on January 1985. Direct sales is just one of several ways Marvel titles are sold. So this list doesn't represent the complete sales picture. Just non-returnable sales are reflected here. Okay, so non-returnable. So this is direct market they're talking about. They're not talking about newsstand stuff, because it says just non-returnable. So returnable would be the newsstand when they rip off the cover and they send it back for credit. Because, you know, like I said, publishers, and that's why most places like, you know, 7-Eleven, drugstores, you know, Kmart, they would have spinner racks, and all your bookstores, B. Dalton, Walden Books. Like I said, we had Fireside and Rochester Book Center. I'm sure other people had their mom and pop places. But the thing is, there was no risk to them. Because if they ordered, say, 100, which they didn't order that many, let's say they ordered 50 Uncanny X-Men 193s, right? If they didn't sell all of them, they just took the ones they didn't sell by the next week or the next month or whatever, and they ripped the covers off, and they send back just the covers. A lot of people kept those comics and put them in like grocery bags. My aunt, Zola, used to give me entire grocery bags just filled with oddball comics. A lot of Dazzler, Conan. She really liked Dazzler, Conan. It's where I got like my my Spider-Woman comics, Miss Marvel comics. She was really into the female characters because she's a woman, so she liked her. You know, she liked her female characters. And of course, like so at that time I was before, you know, I went through puberty, so I wasn't super into the female characters. But that's where I got a lot of those comics, with these giant grocery bags filled with returnables, because she knew a person who had a book, because she was an avid romance novel reader, and she would literally get, I've talked about this before probably, but she would bring in an entire grocery bag, you know, paper grocery bag just filled with romance novels to trade in to get another paper, you know, a bunch of romance novels. And so she was really friends with the used book exchange person she used to go to. And that person used to say, oh yeah, I got all these comics that I returned the covers to and got the covers, so I've got just garbage, grocery bags filled with them. And my aunt would just take them. She would say, you can have them. So she'd take them. She'd give some to her son. He was real big into Conan. And I got a lot of them too. A lot of Archie comics. A lot of stuff was in there. Anyways, so where was my point going? Oh, so I'm talking about the returnables. So this is based on the direct market. So these are the comics that they would order to comic shops, and the people who were doing non-returnables, meaning people were going to keep them for their back issue backstock, which is most comic shops. At the time, like I said, 1985, for me it was Troy Stamp and Coin, and they had stamps and they had coins and they had, other collectible plates, sports stuff, sports cards. They had everything that was, collectible, but they had a huge comic section. And they were definitely one of the ones that were getting the non-returnables. So, and that's where a lot of diehard comic book fans. So this is based on diehard not exclusively, but these were people who are going to comic shops. These weren't people just buying the stuff off the spinner racks at Kmart. So, and again, if they were to add up all that stuff too, and they did reflect it, I'm sure it wouldn't be too far off from what this list is. But as you can see in this list, X-Men 193 is number 1. I'm trying to think what 193 was. I can't remember off the top of my head. Or didn't I just read it? I can't remember. I'm brain dead all of a sudden. Web of Spider-Man. Web of Spider-Man was hot when it started, so they're on episode issue 2 right now, so that's still hot. Alpha Flight. This is when 22. This is when Byrne was on it, so of course it was hot. New Mutants was hot. 27. I don't think that was. Maybe that was Bill Sienkiewicz era. I can't remember, but that was a hot book. And of course, Amazing Spider-Man was hot. So you look at that right there in the top 5. You've got 2 Spider-Man titles and 2 X-Men titles. New Mutants and X-Men. You can't tell me that in the 80s that X-Men and Spider-Man didn't rule the roost. And like I said, that continued into the 90s. That's why they sold those movie rights, because that was their top of the litter that they had, that were negotiating chips to get money to try to save the company. Makes perfect sense. So my question to myself or to other people at times is why are they really focusing on the Avengers? And then when I learned, oh, that's the case, okay, makes perfect sense now. And as people who were doubting me were saying that wasn't true, that's totally true. Look where Avengers falls, in number 8, the category for this particular month. Fantastic Four, higher than that. Thor, of course, I think Simonson was on Thor at the time, I think. So that was hot. Peter Parker, you got 3 titles in the top 10 Spider-Man. All 3 Spider-Man titles. I'm kind of surprised G.I. Joe is number 35, though. I know it got very popular, but maybe by 30, I thought by 35, I'm trying to think, I can't remember what was going on in issue 35. I just read 36 or 35 or 34, I can't remember, I just read one. That wasn't we'll get to that one. It wasn't a great comic. Maybe that's why. Because like I said, this changes every month. But by and large, just looking at this, I just wanted to pull this up real quick. And then I just wanted to flip through real quick and show you. So Marvel Age would give you, they talk about the different issues that are out. There are, of course, issues that are coming out. And then they're talking about Dreadstar, going to Dreadstar and Company. We'll get to that in a minute. It's funny, they used to always have these. I used to kind of, I didn't pencil it on my comics, but I would always write this down on notebook paper. And they're talking about Jim Shooter, or, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to go into a lot of this, Planetary, whatever. So we can close that one out. Let's go into, I don't think I need to keep this list up as much because, like I said, everything's in that other folder with the exception of this Marvel Tales and Moon Knight. And again, I didn't read Moon Knight, and I didn't put it in there, so we're not going to cover that. But Moon Knight Volume 2, number 1, started that week, just to let people know. Where are we at here? Let's go back. Okay, so, Alien Legion. Alien Legion was one of those comics that would be bundled in those packs I was always talking about. And I always saw the covers, and I always thought it looked so cool. It's funny because the one character's helmet always looked like RoboCop, and RoboCop wasn't out yet at the time, but when RoboCop came out, I was like, isn't that something off of the guy from Alien Legion? But I never really, I mean, I might have had a couple of them because I got them in those bundles of Alien Legion, but I really didn't read them. And I didn't start reading some of them. I didn't read a lot of them, but I started reading them in high school, which is, 87 plus. And I had a friend who was really into Alien Legion. By him talking about it, him telling me about what's going on is where I got most of the story from. But I did go back and read this one. This is issue 7 from volume 1. And artwork is amazing. The art, that's what always drew me to Alien Legion, was the art. Here, let's open it up. It always drew me, the artwork. I was like, this is so cool. I always thought this snake guy looked cool. I was like, what is this? I just want to know. Great spaceships, great space stuff, great figures, attractive looking pages, great looking faces. I mean, it's almost kind of like Michael Golden on steroids kind of thing. There's that helmet I was talking about. He looks like RoboCop. But I never really read it. So I read this one. All I gotta say is, I love the artwork, and the story's not bad per se. It's kind of, I don't know. It's very science fiction-y, and they go on for like a long time and talk about like how the ship. It's all pseudoscience, of course. How the ship drives, and it's very science fiction-y. A little too science fiction-y for my blood. I don't like that much science fiction. I like a little more science fantasy. And then they got but I did like this though. There's this. I'm not going to give this away. Spoiler alerts. It's 40 years old. But anyways, it's just they got this guy, and these are called magistrates. And she's on the ship, and he's just a soldier. And I think she kind of takes a shine to this young guy. I think she touches him. If a girl touches you on the arm or something, she likes you. I'm not saying much to marry or jump your bones. I'm just saying that if she touches you, if it makes physical contact, especially if it's skin contact, she trusts you, or she's, I'm not trying to give dating advice because I'm the worst person to give dating advice, but I'm just saying, in my experience of 52 years on this planet, I've noticed if a woman, girl, whatever, touches you and puts skin contact, she likes you. She doesn't do it next in this panel, but she does do it later, and there's kind of like a connection, and I think she likes him, and I think he's kind of like nervous because he gets really weird around her. I like that. I like that that sexual tension that's in it. I love that in the comic, and to see it like with all this techno jargon. And I don't know if you ever read Ben Bova's stuff, any of his science fiction stuff, but his books are kind of all the same. It's like they go to a different planet. Every book's named after a different planet in our solar system, like Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and it's always some scientific guy. It's some professor like him, and he wants to go to. He's going to go to this expedition. He's called upon to go to this expedition. There's always like some very attractive young, like grad student, or young scientist who goes along too, and there's always this sexual tension throughout the entire novel. That's the only thing that really kept me going through just pages and pages of Ben Bova talking about Ben Bova. Sorry, talking about his all this science gobbledygook, which I barely understood. But anyways, so. That one was okay. I like that. I want to see where it goes with that, so I'm going to continue to read these. I'm going to try to continue to read all of them, but I'm going to go through and read these. I'll probably go back at some point and read 1 through 6, but for now I'm just going to continue on. And again, here's another thing. I'll bring this up. People talk about this all the time. I constantly hear this where people talking like, it's so hard to get into comics, so they always got, and this is what they like, we got to keep rebooting, or keep telling the origin stories because it's so hard for people just to jump on anywhere. No, it's not. In the 80s is a prime example of the time where literally it's 1985. Like I said, I went in 1984. I started going and getting comic books for the first time, getting them off the rack, reading them, collecting them. I didn't start with X-Men #1. I didn't know the origin of X. I just learned who X-Men were in 1984. I had no clue I kind of heard the name, but I didn't know what they were. Didn't know anything about Wolverine. Didn't care to know anything about his past. I didn't really care to know any of the backstory. I just want, right from where I jumped on, that's where I wanted to start from. Same thing with here, Alien Legion. Do I need to know what happens in 1 through 6? No. I can jump on to number 7 and I can keep going. And that's the same with all this stuff. Conan's a great example. It's very episodic. We'll get to Dreadstar. I never read Dreadstar as a kid. And now I'm reading Dreadstar, and same thing. I just jump right on with whatever issue this is, 18. And I'm fine. I understand it. I'm not the smartest kid. Trust me, I could barely read at that time, and I could do this. I don't know why people are, complaining today. Oh, comics are too hard to jump on, get into because there's just so much back history and lore. Just like, okay. Granted, especially Marvel, a lot of comic books would kind of they'd have a lot of exposition. They'd kind of reiterate, like they'd talk like, oh, Wolverine's adamantium claws are unbreakable. They'd say that in every issue. So you kind of got that kind of drilled into your head. So if they didn't have some of that stuff, but some of these comics, like this Dreadstar doesn't do that. The Alien Legion doesn't do that. The Conan's once in a blue moon, they talk about him being from Samaria, but they don't just keep, going back. So let's go into Conan since this is next. I did collect Conan back then. I did have this issue. It's funny. I read it again, and I realized how much I loved Conan. And one of the reasons, of course, is Big John right there. Big John Buscema. He was pretty much my favorite Conan artist. I did not like Barry Windsor Smith. I didn't like his art at all. I always liked Buscema, and Susie's Conan stuff was always great. And I just forgot how much I liked Conan. I mean, these stories are very simple. They're very raw and primal. They're very, they're very manly. They're very, it's a male power fantasy, which is, something you don't get much anymore. And the girl needs rescuing. He rescues the girl. Usually he sleeps with the girl, but usually in the Marvel one they kind of tone that down. Savage Sword of Conan, they didn't tone that down. And then he dispatches some dudes, saves the girl. She looks just like one of John Buscema's typical female characters. He goes back and he kills the bad guy. And in this one, there's kind of I won't give it away. Again, spoiler alert, it's 40 years. There's some divine intervention with this one. But great story. You get your half-naked dancing girls. I really like the brunette ones. You get your half-naked dancing girls. You get a lot of sword fighting. You get a lot of panels like this. Dudes just getting whacked. Conan always, being Conan. Of course, being a barbarian, he hates all the supernatural. He dies in this one, supposedly. So, he's buried alive. Great stuff. I mean, it's just classic Conan and classic sword and fantasy, sword and sandal, or whatever you want to call it. And it's just amazing. So this stuff was, if they do it nowadays, they're just trying to copy this stuff, and they don't do a good job of copying it. Dreadstar. Again, I'm not a big, fuzzy cat character. I'm not a furry, and I'm not big into like the anamorphic characters, and it's not really a distraction. It's kind of like Star Trek with this, like the Star Trek animated series, where it's just like you've got these like fuzzy characters that are just very human or alien human. I didn't know this was, it's funny. I was looking at the artwork, and I'm like, the artwork looks pretty good. It looks like somebody, and I can't figure out who it was. It's Jim Starlin. I didn't, maybe I did know that. But, when I went to read this, that part, I lost it, and it was lost in my memory. So, I either forgot or I didn't know that. And I was like, oh, it's Jim Starlin. So I'm not a huge Jim Starlin fan. I didn't like Infinity Gauntlet. It's just too 90s for me. I know people love that. That's, of course, Endgame, blah, blah, blah. But also what's weird about this character is, and this is going on at the time, it's like, did he just copy Scarlet? Because this character she's got red hair, ponytail, she's got Scarlet's uniform, just without the ninja stars on her gauntlets. without the hand crossbow. It's pretty much Scarlet. I never understood that. I remember seeing that as a kid too, and like, is this Scarlet in this comic? I mean, the color's the same, like the exact color, the same Doc Martin ink they used to do Scarlet, a bodysuit underneath her yellow leotard. That's Scarlet. I thought that was weird. This one's good. I mean, this particular issue, it took me, I'd say, about halfway to the comic, then I finally warmed up to it and I started liking it. But just like Alien Legion, it took me, a few pages to kind of get into the flow. Now I'm into the flow. I think I could read the next ones without too much trouble. There's some funny stuff in this one too. It's kind of funny too. So if you like science fiction, science fantasy, you like Star Wars, you like superheroes, blah blah blah, you're gonna like Dreadstar. This G.I. Joe comic, it's 36. I think they say 32 in the Marvel Age. Okay, so this is 36. I like the cover because I think this is when they're really trying to sell the asp and the whale, and this was like the debut comic to really sell that toy, because these comics are essentially just promotions to sell toys, just like the cartoon was. A lot of it takes place it's a water battle. There's a nice good whale shot there. Torpedoes in it, Deep Six is in it, and they've got all these asps that they've got. It's okay. Like I said, Torpedoes in it, and then Scarlet's doing this kind of mission with this guy that's, obviously it's Snake Eyes with the mask on, but you're not supposed to know that. Spoiler alert: it's 40 years. It's got rattlers in it, so it's also trying to sell the rattlers, but it's really, I think it was primarily, and the hydrofoil I think had another issue that really featured the hydrofoil and spotlighted it. I think this was the issue that they were trying to sell asps and whales. And it's pretty cool. It delivers. There's this thing where Doc and Tripwire are trying to get this Gatling gun to work and blah blah blah. It's one of those kind of like last minute things. We need, all's failed, but G.I. Joe's, they're digging down their determination and grit, and they're going to get the job done and fight off the bad guys. And there's two different stories going on. Actually, I think there's three different stories going on in this all at the same time. There's the guys on the ship with Cutter or Flag or wherever it is, and then you've got the guys on the whale, and then you've got the Scarlet and Snake Eyes. Little espionage, infiltration stuff. I mean, it's classic G.I. Joe. Sorry, it's late in the day now. I'm finally starting to get tired. Did I eat dinner? Yeah, I ate dinner. Okay. But yeah, so there's that. Not the best G.I. Joe issue, but it's still a classic G.I. Joe issue. There are better issues. I'm not even going to open the Hulk. The Hulk, I did not read the Incredible Hulk at this time, and this Incredible Hulk in specific is really boring. Really boring. I don't like it when they do this thing where they're like in another... They do this in the Rom comic of this month too, and again, Rom comic kind of follows suit. It's very, like philosophical, I guess. It's just very like trippy, kind of like in the cosmos kind of thing, where it's like a lot of narration, because Hulk's not, it's just a lot of talking, and the Hulk does this, and it's just it was not enjoyable. So I'm going to keep reading the Hulk, because I know it does eventually get better, but this was a hard read. Hulk was a hard read for me. And Rom, even though I like Rom, this in particular issue, it started off okay, but then it started to get into this weird thing where this other character, and then it's doing that weird thing where they're just talking about Rom, his place in the cosmos. And I know they do that in a lot of Roms, but there wasn't as much meat and potato stories. I think this was just kind of a filler issue. Of course, we talked about Marvel Age. Call the Conqueror, it was kind of short-lived. I think it actually ends like on issue 12 or issue 15. It is not as cool as Conan. I would say, it's got, we'll flip through it real quick. Got a cool cover, Snake Guy. It's also by Buscema, so he's doing both of these comics. I'm sure he can do this stuff in his sleep. it's a lot of the same, but in this one in particular, like Cull's barely in it. There's this guy who's, you know, a hangers-on of Cull the Conqueror, and then you get these two fops or whatever they call them, and they kind of trick. They want to get into this dungeon that's protected, and they figure this guy can get in there because he knows how or whatever. And then you got this other guy whose daughter's asleep, and he wants her to, you know, wake up so she can marry Cull and become the princess. And the two young guy, the two whatever goofball guys, get him to unlock this door, which is sealed for a reason. And then of course there's lizard men come out. Gotta have lizard men. And then you know. I didn't quite understand this page. It kind of goes off on this page tangent and then comes back. I thought like maybe whoever put the CBR together might have put the wrong guy together. I put the wrong page in there because it just doesn't fit. I didn't get it. So I read it, but I just like, okay, I'll just put that out of my mind and went back to the story. And then, of course, you know, Cull wakes up and comes down there, and he's like, what? And there's this ghost, and like, spoiler again, 40 years. That happens. So, it's good. It's not as good as Conan. I would say it's Conan, this comic in particular, is better than this comic. But if you want a little bit of the same, but that's a good, Cull's fine. I didn't collect Cull as a kid. I didn't get what it was, and somebody told me later, oh, it's Cull's supposed to be Conan's father. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. But I didn't get into it. I liked Conan, and I think a lot of it, like I said, my Aunt Zola's son Todd, I think he really was pushing the Conan on me too. And then my one friend from high school, or actually even from elementary school, he was into the Conan a lot, and he would talk about it a lot. So between those two, I kind of like kept my Conan thing going. But I mean, I've read the novels. I've, you know, yada yada yada. The Avengers is a pretty decent one. You know, it's this certain team of the Avengers, and they end up in the Savage Land again, which is amazing. Is who's doing the art? John Buscema. He's doing 3 comics. You know, he's doing the. I'm assuming, I don't know if this is 100%. The breakdowns. This has always been a question that people may have answered, but I just still don't get it. Is breakdown is just their fancy word for saying penciler, right? And finisher just means the inker, right? Because sometimes they'll say the embellisher. Sometimes they'll say, and they'll give them like goofy names sometimes when they want to be funny. So I'm assuming breakdown just means you're breaking down the script and penciling it out, and then a finisher comes along and inks it, right? But like I said, I mean, he's laying out, and he got backgrounds in this. Apparently, John Buscema did not like to draw city scenes, so that's why he liked Conan. He liked to do castles and mountains and trees and landscapes. He didn't like to do cities, and so with this one, sorry, how long am I? Oh, I've already at 33 minutes. I'll try to wrap this up with less than an hour. But he, as I said, he's doing 3 comics. He's doing Cull, Conan, and this one in the same month. That's amazing. That's just insane. You know, these are 22-page comic books. He's cranking out 3 of them in a month. I mean, it's just a testament to these guys, the work that they did, you know, and just amazing work. And like I said, well, I guess I didn't say it, but Buscema rarely ever phones it in. I mean, Byrne would do 3 issues. He'll do X-Men. He'll do Fantastic Four, and he'll do Alpha Flight and same things. But as you can know, like I think Alpha Flight 3 or 4, I can't remember which one is the Snowbird issue. He phones it in. I love his artwork. I like Buscema better than Byrne. Although I do like Byrne. I like both are She-Hulk, but I think Byrne gave She-Hulk more of character than Buscema. Just kind of did her straight. He drew her kind of straight. Good, but just a little too vanilla. And because they didn't know what they were doing with the character at the time. But he where was I going with this? But like I said, Byrne would phone it in once in a while, but Buscema never seemed to phone in. His brother Sal, not as good as him, but his brother, I still like his stuff a lot, and he didn't phone it in a lot either. A lot of people don't like Al Milgrom. I like Al Milgrom, but Al Milgrom did some sloppy work, but I still like him. But this stuff is, and this is just classic Marvel Comics. I mean, this is comics because he wrote the book, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. This is John Buscema, so of course this is going to be textbook the Marvel Way. But great stuff. This is where, what's his face? It's just funny. Here, I'll show you this real quick. But this is where Hercules gets his costume that he's known for. His brother Asbestos. No, what the hell is his name? I can't remember. Asbestius or Hepatitis? What is it? Hephaestus himself? Oh no, crafted by Hephaestus. What's his name? I know what's good heavens, blah blah blah. I can't remember, but Buscema must have had a thing for Wasp because he draws her crazy in this. Very hippie. He's got her in these, basically she's just running around in her underwear with these leg warmers on, and just some of the, I mean, you can tell he really likes this character. He really makes Wasp, and it makes her look good, you know. I know, was it Don Heck? Is Don Heck the one that created him? Or Burnt? No, I think what's his face created her. Stan and Kirby, but I think Don Heck really was it Don Heck one of the ones that really brought her to life? I know Don Heck was known for bringing Scarlet Witch and making her. He really liked the Scarlet Witch, but I think he did her really well. But and what's his face? I mean, Buscema's. You could tell he really is into her. That looks great, and there's the new costume. And again, I always like the tension between the female and the male characters. I just like that. It's one of I mean, it happens in anything, not just superhero stuff. But when you throw superheroes, this kind of artwork, and then you throw that little dynamic in there, I always like that. And this is, of course, she's divorced him, Hank, at the time, so she's kind of, you know, she's a free agent. And then, of course, I really like Monica Rambeau. I mean, I like her, but I really like Monica. I love her outfit. I don't like the new outfits that they've done. I think they totally ruined this character, but I liked her giant hair. I loved her outfit. You know, obviously, she had some great legs on her too. I love the buccaneer boots, the swashbuckler boots. But yeah, I really like Monica a lot. And then it's just these great shots. I mean, obviously, I think they had to black it. I bet you they blacked that out. They said, you know, John, we don't need to put her ass crack in there. Let's black all this out because she's very centrally focused on this panel. But you know, her aside, look at this panel. I mean, this isn't even ruled, I don't think, or French curved. He just laid this out. The inker may have used, but it looks like the inker has just used that elbow. You know, use that motion to just ink these straight, because they're not perfectly straight, so I don't think these are ruled at all. And of course, all that, you know, all this stuff, I mean, Byrne's good at this stuff, but I like Buscema the way he does it more. And I love how they leave this open panel and all this white space, and it bleeds into the white space. I just love that. That's so appealing when I see a comic book page. You get this, you know, get the Avengers Quinjet flying out. These two guys are watching them. Again, I won't give you the story away. They go to do some investigation, and of course, what's his face? They're in Savage Land, and then they come across Terminus, and then of course he's in a few of the issues. So it'll be. I've read these before, but I'm gonna read them again. So so let's just, where are we at? Okay, we got one more time. Let's talk about X-Men real quick, and then I'll give you a breakdown. Which ones I had, which ones I bought, which ones I didn't buy. Let's go through X-Men. This is a pretty decent one. I think it's the first appearance of Nimrod, I believe. I'm not 100% certain. Juggernaut's in it. This is John Romita Jr. As much as I have problems with John Romita Jr., this was not a bad issue. And like I said, I jumped on in '84, so this was right when I fell in love with the X-Men. And he was the artist at the time, so, you know, because, I mean, we haven't even got Arthur Adams hasn't even done an X-Men comic yet, because we haven't even got the Longshot comes out this year, the limited series, we haven't got there yet. You get the shower scene with Rogue, of course you don't see anything, of course, but it's very suggestive. Storms doesn't have her power. She's back in Africa. Blah blah blah. She's just kind of doing the vigilante thing with her people. And then you've got what were they? Oh yeah, that's right. What were they doing? I can't remember. I'm trying to remember what they were doing. They were, or I think because Juggernaut was seen, and they didn't know what Juggernaut was going to do. He wasn't breaking any laws. He wasn't rampaging, but they just wanted to keep an eye on Juggernaut to see what's going on, and not engage. And of course, that's when Nimrod shows up. I am Nimrod, and of course, if you know in Nimrod, he's like a super sentinel. He's coming back, and he wants to wipe out all mutants, so he's going to start with Juggernaut, the biggest one, and then he'll, as the X-Men show themselves, this guy's pro. He knows everything about all of them, so he's just going to try to exterminate all of the X-Men. And then there's big fights ensue, lots of real estate being destroyed. Juggernaut gets his helmet knocked off. You got my favorite Rogue costume. I think she makes a comment about, she's like, I just got a new costume, and this one's getting, she's like, I'm going through so many costumes. I always like the all-black bodysuit with just the top, and then the belts and the boots and stuff. I like that one. I like the one from, like, Inferno, but I like this one the most. And, of course, she gets everybody's, some of these panels are in the Marvel Universe Handbook. Like that panel there is the Marvel Universe Handbook. But, yeah, she gets gets everybody's powers, and she goes after, she figures if Nimrod's programmed for each one of their powers, if she gets them all at the same time, he might not be able to compensate, which he doesn't. And she kind of, knocks him out of, or he takes off. He kind of, she damages him enough to where he's like, I'm out, so he takes off, and then, of course, she's kind of irritated because Juggernaut's just kind of like, well, didn't even say thank you for saving him. He just kind of leaves. She's still Metal from Colossus. And then you get this little dealio here in the end. But, alright, so let's finish this out. So these are the comics I purchased. Guess now, and then I'll tell you. But anyway, I think I might even told you this already. Nope, didn't pick it up. Yes. Nope. Yes. Nope. Nope. Not this one, but I did get these eventually. Yes, got the ROM, got Avengers, and got X-Men. So this week, like I said, if I was a kid and I went up there with, what was it, 65 cents, 65, 75. That's right, because G.I. Joe was considered their premium titles. Let's just say $1.50. Let's just make them all 75, make it easy. So $1.50. $1.50 and $4.50. No, sorry, $1.50, $3 plus $3.75. Actually, I'm jacking them up, so it's more like $3.50. So less than $4 to get my comics. Less than the price of one comic now. Or actually, I think they've raised it now to $4.99. So for less than the price of one modern comic, which I did pick up. Number 11 of the facsimile. This one's $3.99, but I think the Marvel ones are $4.99. So for the less than the price of a comic, you get all, 1, 2, 3, or 5 comics at the time. A couple of things I think about as I'm reading this stuff, though. Obviously, memories come flooding back of buying these off the shelf. Like I said, most of these I bought from either Rochester Book Center or Fireside. Mostly Rochester Book Center at this time, because we didn't move up into the hills of Rochester yet. We're, up on the hill where the mall was. So I was probably still going most of the time to Rochester Book Center. Again, same owners own both stores. And then on the way back, I would always pop into B. Dalton. A lot of times I'd go into B. Dalton because it was in Great Oaks Mall, and I would go in there, like if I went to Kittyland, the toy store, to look for toys or whatever, or went over to Joe's, sometimes I'd pop over and I'd hit the mall, and I'd go on my bike, and I'd go in B. Dalton, or is it Walden in there? It was Walden Books. Yeah, it was Walden and Great Oaks Mall and the Meadowbrook. We had 3 malls in the city. It was weird. smaller malls, but there were 3 malls. Meadowbrook had B. Dalton. So we had B. Dalton, Rochester Book Center. There's 2. We had Walden Books, and then we had Fireside. So we had 4 bookstores. I think there's one downtown called the Book Barn. There was the Rochester Book Exchange down with used books, which was like one of those ones where you pick up the romance novels. And speaking of that, I later learned of Kay's Book Exchange up. Rochester had a lot of bookstores, and of course they built a Barnes & Noble there in the early 2000s, early 90s, or 90, I think, or 91, and it's still there, but all the other bookstores are gone. I don't think, there's nothing left. There's no bookstores. Oh, they built another Barnes & Noble out where Meadowbrook used to be. Weird. But you can get graphic novels at some of them, but you're not going to get comics. If you're in Rochester, which I'm not at the moment, you'd have to go to the Comics Corner, which is still there over in Auburn and John R. To get comic books there. I think the only place to get comics in Rochester without going out of the city. There's just not a lot of any of this stuff anymore in the stores. I mean, you gotta go to these specialty shops. There's no newsstand anymore, so there's no, the ones where they rip off the covers, so you can't get any of these anywhere. It's sad, I mean, this stuff was everywhere. It was cheap and it was everywhere, and you didn't have the internet. In 85, we'd just gotten our first VCR. We had cable in 83, but we just got a VCR in 85, so, there wasn't a lot of entertainment options outside of the 4 channels, the network channels, and then the UHF stations. And then, of course, we had cable, so we still I was watching MTV and all that at the time. We had Cinemax, Showtime, Movie Channel. But, I mean, by and large, your only real entertainment options, cheap and easy entertainment that were yours, were either buying novels, and those weren't that expensive, or buying comic books. And for me, because I was a terrible reader, I'd read more comic books. So, and of course I love the art more, so it's what really drew me in. Alright, I finished this up just under 50 minutes, so we'll stop it there. I'll post this next week, which doesn't really matter to you because you'll see it when you see it, which will be next week for me. But other than that, again, I get all this information from this site here. Sorry, my she who shall not be named is going off in the other room. But yeah, this is the site that I get all in from. Right, so I know what came out by week. So there's that. So if you want, go ahead and check that out. Otherwise, I will catch you on the next one. All right, bye bye. Oops.